DJ PK and BYU beat writer for the Deseret News. Jay Drew joins us once again. Jay, good morning.
Good morning.
Jay, big game. How big? PK's been hyping it. Biggest game ever. It'd be the worst loss. It'd be the best win. Would you like to throw any cold water into that at all? I mean, you got to be feeling some of it.
Yeah, I think it's up there. I mean, I think we were saying the same thing before the Texas Tech game, and everybody, locally knows how that went. So, but yeah, there's probably the highest stakes, probably the most on the line for BYU. And it just every game this season, it seems like it's kind of ramped up that way as it's gradually moved up, where they've basically now put themselves in a situation where a loss would be absolutely devastating to their season, to their college football playoff hopes, to the Big 12 championship game hopes. So it's up there. It's one of the most important in program history, at least in the Kalani Sitake era. If we were to put it that way, I think you wouldn't take anything away from the 1984 national championship bowl game that won them the national championship and other things. But at least in the Kalani Sitake era, I got to think this is probably the biggest game.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that if they lose it, it's, oh my gosh, they're 9-2 and this season sucks. But that's sort of where they're at, and we'll see. And hopefully for their sakes they win. I think that one of the things that was more, not maybe most impressive, but just impressive to me is clearly the Texas Tech loss was a deflating loss, and the manner in which they lost too. You can play them tough, and somebody's got to win, so you can still find some positives. And I suppose you can find a little bit of positive in their defense from that game, but it certainly was a downer. And then not just beating TCU, which is a halfway decent team, but dominating TCU. That was, from their perspective, as I looked at their team, a pleasant surprise to me that they owned that game basically from start to finish, which I don't know can restore completely the confidence you had going into the Texas Tech game, but goes a long way to where going back to Cincinnati, they should have a fair amount of confidence, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, watching them walk off the field there in Lubbock, my personal thought was that, man, this might spiral. The TCU game all of a sudden becomes incredibly important, and it looked like some of their confidence was nicked. Everybody except Chase Roberts, I guess should say, because he boldly said that we're going to see these guys again in the college football championship game, and so I think you're right, PK. That was very, very impressive what they were able to do against TCU. They kept their focus. Bear Bachmeier bounced back. He showed a lot in that game. I think in the past maybe some BYU quarterbacks would have started panicking a little bit, maybe not trusting their offensive line as much, not trusting some of the receivers. But Bear was he did run a little bit more than he did in the Texas Tech game, but he picked his spots. He looked absolutely great. He made a brilliant fake on one play that got him into the end zone with the fake pitch. So, this team has really good leadership. I know that's kind of a cliche and coaches throw out there a lot, but just from my own personal perspective, you got guys like Tanner Wall, and I mentioned Chase Roberts and Bruce Mitchell on the offensive line, and just you can go kind of down the list. But this is a team that seems to be able to handle adversity a little bit better than maybe some BYU teams in the past, including last year's where they lost to Kansas and they fell at Arizona State. So, I think they're well equipped to go into Cincinnati and make a much better showing than they did the last time out on the road.
Are you surprised that the line is like 2.5 points? What are people seeing? Because everything you said makes sense to me. It's stuff we've talked about. Before you came on the air, it all lines up, and all of that lines up to BYU wins by 7, 10, 14. I don't know. Maybe there's some late score. Who knows? But BYU wins at least semi-comfortably, not dramatically. But that's not what a bunch of the gamblers are seeing, so maybe they're seeing something that I'm missing. What am I missing?
Yeah, I've thought about that quite a bit too. I think first of all, Cincinnati playing at home for the second straight week, so there's got to be some comfort level there. They weren't blown out by Arizona. If you watch that game, they were in it to the end. They had a few things go against them. Also, from what I hear, I'm not an expert on Cincinnati's roster, but they're getting two key players back. I think they're getting their second leading receiver, I want to say, and maybe even either their first or second leading running back. So they're getting two key offensive weapons back. And then, home field advantage. They got big noon kickoff is going to be there, so that's going to rile everybody up. And in Lubbock, that was crazy. That crowd was that was one of the most, just, I don't want to say hostile, but just wound up crowds coming off, college game day being there in Lubbock. So home field advantage, I tell people this all the time, is really big in college sports. I think it's biggest in basketball. I think that's where the advantage is the biggest. But in football, there is something to that as well. And I think Cincinnati's been looking forward to this game all season. I think the crowd will be pretty hyped. So I think there's some things that work in Cincinnati's favor. On paper, I think BYU is the more talented team. I think Cincinnati's quarterback, Sorsby, has been nicked up a little bit, and maybe a kind of a minor disappointment as opposed to how Bear Bachmeier has played for BYU. So I think I can kind of see, especially because it's a road game for the Cougars, why they're not a bigger favorite.
One of the things, if not the biggest thing that dismayed me about the Texas Tech loss was the amount of mistakes that BYU had made with obviously the punt situations, and you had drop passes, and that was stuff that we knew had been very much minimized in their other games, their close games, as they were able to make plays. Other teams were making mistakes. A level of concern that you might have that would be repeated, because that could be very detrimental to them having an opportunity to win this game.
Yeah, certainly. I'm sure they've focused on that. Being down there at practice, they've pumped in the crowd noise a lot this week, and they did before the Texas Tech game. But I remember after the game that I think it was A-Rod, it might have been Kalani, that said they had a lot of trouble with the communication, because of the crowd noise, with getting the play calls in to Bear, and A-Rod said the other day that they think they've got that figured out, sorted out, and they'll be able to handle that more effectively than they did in Lubbock. I doubt it'll be as crazy and loud and raucous as it was in Lubbock, but Cincinnati Stadium isn't as big. Obviously, for the Bearcats, the stakes aren't as high, but that's certainly one thing they've got to figure out. Those false starts will kill you when you get behind the chains. That's kind of where the biggest impact I think the crowd makes. But then you can't make any botched punts on special teams like they did right off the bat that really put them in a hole early and got the crowd into it. So. Yeah, I think that's going to be huge for BYU. You just can't shoot yourselves in the foot, and if you don't do that, I think you're in a pretty good spot where you can pull this one out.
There've been a lot of expectations put on JoJo Phillips. He's a redshirt sophomore, and he still doesn't have 20 career catches. But man, you just have to watch the guy walk across the field. I mean, he looks like a wide receiver supposed to look, right? And he's 6'5", and it does feel like he could break out at some point in a game that could be close. I know he had the drop at Texas Tech, but honestly, catching one more pass was not going to turn that game around. Has he had a couple weeks to scrape the rust off? Do you expect more out of him, or is this a little bit of a lost year? He's been out so long, and maybe expect big things out of him next year, or could he make a big play in this one? And what's your sense of where he is?
Yeah, I think they still have a lot of confidence in him. For that Monday weekly press briefing, they had him come out or talk to the media, which I think shows quite a bit that they still have a lot of confidence in him. A-Rod was asked about that Tuesday, and he said, JoJo was a lot better in game 2 than he was in game 1 in his comeback after missing 6 games. He's a confident kid. I think he'll be fine. He grew up more of a basketball player than a football player, and so he. I'm not saying that's, he's not a natural receiver because he's obviously had 2 or 3 years to kind of get acclimated to the college system. But I think they still have full confidence in him, and I think he's going to have a couple of good games here on the finish. Obviously, their top 2 guys are Chase Roberts and Parker Kingston, and then Cody Hagan might be back. I think he's listed as probable on the injury report that came out last night. So throw all that together. I think JoJo will have a few more catches that he's had leading into the game in the next 2 games, but he clearly isn't one of the top 2 priorities for Bear Bachmeier. And I'd even say that probably the 3rd priority would be Carson Ryan, the tight end. So I think that might be good for JoJo, where he's not focused on by opposing defenses, but I think coaches still have a lot of confidence in him and are always talking about his upside. But if you're on his side, it's time to put up or shut up. They've been talking about him for a long time, like you said, David, and now's the time to prove everybody in Cougar Blue right that he does have that great potential to be a big time college receiver.
I think last year on the defensive side, the breakout star was Isaiah Glasker. Now this year, can we say the same about Satawala?
I think so. The guy's a playmaker. He's made some great plays this year. Really, the play at Iowa State might have won that game for him. The way that game was going, the pick 6, and then obviously the pick the other day against TCU. But speaking of a guy who just looks like a college football player when he's out on the field for a safety, just has the size and the way he moves. He's a blossoming superstar, I think, and yeah, I think he's going to have a great career at BYU. Well, he's already on the path, but he's really a kid that's blossomed a lot. When he came into the program, he was really shy and not real. I don't want to say not friendly to the media, but he just didn't like to talk a lot. But now he's really comfortable in that role as well, and you can tell he's looked up to by his teammates, kind of one of those team leaders, even though this is just his 2nd year. So, yeah, I think the sky's the limit for that kid. I think if you look at BYU's roster, you start to wonder which of these kids can go on and play in the NFL, and I would think Satawala is right up there near the top of one of those guys that seemingly has all the tools that maybe can make it at the next level.
Because you're around the team so much, is there anybody else you're looking for to step up here late in the year? You think somebody might be on the verge of breaking out that the public isn't quite up to speed on, but you've heard about?
Yeah, that's a good question. I keep telling people they need another running back. They need somebody to step up there and help LJ Martin out a little bit. Obviously, with the injuries to Sione Moa and then Hinckley Rapati didn't get the year back, and the running back situation's been well documented. So I keep thinking, maybe it'll be Preston Rex. Last week against TCU, they went a lot with Enoch Nawahini. Not a lot, but when LJ needed a bit of a rest. So off the top of my head, I really can't think of anybody. I think it's curious that they haven't really found a second tight end to throw the ball to after kind of a fast start. They threw it to other tight ends besides Carson Ryan. So, but I think Carson Ryan's even going to get a bigger workload moving forward. So I would probably say him. We saw a lot more in the TCU game out of him, and I think moving forward, they're going to really rely on him a lot, especially with that red zone offense is so huge in college football. Is getting touchdowns instead of field goals. And when you look at that, and when teams start to key on LJ Martin down down when they're inside the 20, I think you really need a guy like Carson Ryan, a tight end, kind of like Isaac Rex used to do where you can get a guy that's bigger, can handle a little pressure from a defensive back and get open in that tight space in the red zone. And so I guess I would say Carson Ryan, look for him to have a big finish to the season.
Kevin Young in his media availability said he knows exactly what happened with Kennard Davis, and then he's going to let the university speak. What do you know about it as far as what happened?
Yeah, I mean, first I got to say I've heard a ton of rumors and people saying things. I was there, or this person told me this and all that. So, me personally, I'm trying to stick to the police report and the court documents. So, but I have heard that if Kevin Young wasn't there when the accident happened, he was on the scene almost immediately. So, when he says I know exactly what happened, I think that's where he's coming from. Nowhere in the police report does it, the one that was actually the parts of it that were issued by Provo Police Department, does it say who caused the accident? Does it say anything about the other driver who received the ticket for causing the accident? It's curious that Kennard Davis did not receive a ticket, even though there was a 2-car crash. He was not cited for improper lookout or reckless driving or whatever. So, I only know really for sure what's been released in the police report yet. And, there are other rumors out there. You guys probably heard them. There were other players in the vehicle. That's not in the police report. So as of right now, it's just one of those things that I think we just have to be patient and kind of wait until this information trickles out through the court system and then go from there.
Their team seems really shallow depth-wise, so that could be a fairly decent blow.
Yeah, they also lost Nate Pickens, the transfer from UC Riverside. They and now obviously with Kennard Davis, and then Keba Keita suffered some sort of a head injury. I guess you could call it a concussion. So Kevin said yesterday that Keba is showing good progress, or there's more positives than negatives. But I think if he's in concussion protocol after an injury that happened last Saturday, that it would be asking a lot for him to return. So suddenly they don't have a lot of depth at least from the guys that have played so far. They've got a pretty good bench, but guys that are really, really untested, including the freshman Xavion Staton. So, the game against Wisconsin Friday is probably going to be pretty tough for BYU, given where their shape of their roster right now.
Can A.J. DeBonsa just put the cape on and just carry him? Just hop on Superman and let him. Let him ride.
Yeah, UConn. He's got to start faster. He's started fairly slowly in really all 4 games, even against Villanova in Las Vegas. So, and I think I think they've had a lot of time this summer to put in plays for him, to give him the isolation plays, whatever, to get him the ball, to get him free in space. So. Yeah, you would think this Friday afternoon, 2 p.m., kind of an odd start time for a college basketball game at the Delta Center. But 2 p.m. Friday, I think a lot will be on his shoulders to kind of carry the load with those other guys out.
Jay, you're the man. We appreciate it as always. You headed back to Cincinnati?
Yep, heading to Cincinnati tomorrow, and be the second time. I was there, 8 years ago, when Taysom Hill and Jamal Williams pulled out a win. I think it was 21-3 win. The big thing I remember from that game is Tommy Tuberville, who's now, I think he's a U.S. Senator now. He was Cincinnati's coach. And after the game was over,
he got into it with fans.
He got into it with a fan, and you remember, you guys, as you covered a lot of games in your careers, you kind of remember odd things about games, and that's what sticks out in my mind.
I remember it, and I wasn't even there.
Yeah. All right, Jay, we appreciate it. Have a good trip.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me on, guys.
There's Jay Drew. You can read him in the Deseret News covering BYU football. DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Coming up next, everything you missed in this show. A lot of football, some hoops, and we'll get to that next.